Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery Qualification meeting. We meet every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, which is 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Today is Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. My name is Darlene L. I am a grateful recovered Al-Anon, and I am your speaker for this evening. So grateful to be here. Tonight, I will share what I used to be like before I had the spiritual experience through Al-Anon, what happened during the process, and what I'm like now. So, yes, in order to set the tone for our meeting, before I dive into that, I will ask that we pause and bow our heads here in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, followed by the serenity prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity, accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And thy will, not mine, be done. All right. So, yes, once again, my name is Darlene. I'm so grateful to be a recovered Al-Anon. This hour will go quickly, so I'm going to try to cover everything, beginning, middle, end. I do think it's important to talk about where I came from, a little bit of background, mostly just to remind any newcomers, anyone that listens to this recording, that we come from all walks of life. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all when it comes to Al-Anon. It's just important. I'm going to share a little bit about my life before, and some of you may relate to some things and some may not, and that's okay. Someone out there has some similarities to your story. There's no one-size-fits-all, as I said previously. So I have been recovered in Al-Anon since 2019. Yeah, it was 5 years last month. And I came to Al-Anon by way of another 12-step fellowship, which, it's important to it'll be part of a little bit of my story, and I'm just so grateful that I have recovered and that I found Al-Anon when I did. And yeah, it sort of took, finding another 12-step program and kind of going through it to arrive here. And that doesn't happen to everyone, but it is part of my story. So I'll just start off by saying that I grew up in a small town, and it was not tiny, but it was small enough where, you go to the grocery store or the mall, and you'd always see at least one person whether it was from church or school or some other extracurricular activity. So, kind of a small town gal. I was the middle child. I have two sisters. My parents, I came from a two-parent home, and my parents were married. We were a middle-class family. We pretty much had everything we ever needed and probably things we wanted as well. Life was okay, right? There's no such thing as a perfect family, though. I will also include that I grew up in a Christian home, so I've always known a concept of God or, a higher power, if you will, that was introduced to me, from the time I was born. And, it's kind of a key component to my story, which I'll add later. But yeah, so that's kind of just a little bit of kind of where I came from. And yeah, no family is perfect, even if they appear to be. I know that, many times I would hear, positive things from friends that, you and your mom are so close, or your dad's such a nice guy. And, and these things are true to a certain extent, but often there are things going on kind of behind closed doors that, not everyone sees about or talks about, right? And especially culturally, there are times where, mom's the word and we don't talk about it. And, in the generation I grew up in, you're not supposed to really express your feelings. At least in my home. emotionally, so physically we were provided with a roof over our head, food to eat, clothes to wear, and extras. We're probably not, we were middle class. We were able to live an okay lifestyle. Not without sacrifice. My dad worked hard, and my mom, at one point had a couple of jobs. Like, they worked hard to provide, for all of our material needs. It was emotionally where there was some lack. Can't think of a better term. Both sides of my parents, there was a bit of lack, which is important as a child, right? You want to feel safe and loved. And I didn't get that on a daily basis. Not to say it was never there. It was just very inconsistent, and that can be hard for a kid who craves routine and, needing to know, is dad going to be in a bad mood tomorrow? Is mom going to be home? Is she going to be bothered by dad's mood? Is she going to be happy and able to ignore him today? Am I going to fight with my siblings? Are they going to, my parents going to break it up? Just questions like that. Kids need routine and consistency to feel a sense of normalcy, and not everybody gets that, and it certainly wasn't in my home on a consistent basis. Again, not every day was like that, but that almost made it worse to kind of not know, the unpredictability factor. And part of the reason for that, that I was slightly tuned into was that there was alcoholism on both sides of the family. So each of my parents had a parent who struggled a bit with alcohol. It was a bit of a taboo topic. I wouldn't say they never spoke about it, but we never really were, it wasn't really talked about. I think I heard the word alcoholic a couple of times throughout my childhood, but I don't ever really recall anyone, sitting down and explaining what that meant. Or I do remember one of my grandparents seemed to have been recovered. I think I remember hearing about, that was the first time I had ever heard about Al-Anon, AA, which, was kind of coined with the term 12 steps. So I had a little bit of just very basic knowledge. I think I knew it meant 12 steps, but I probably didn't know what they were or what that meant. Just hearing AA. And then, you sort of hear it maybe on films or TV or just other people talking about it here and there. So I had a little bit of knowledge. And I certainly never experienced that grandparent, in an alcoholic state, at least that I remember. And maybe perhaps it was that I was already, they had already recovered by the time I was old enough, or I just wasn't around. I'm not really sure. I don't know the full details of their sobriety. But it definitely impacted my parents, and more so from, childhood, which, as an adult myself and as I've gone through recovery and just other trauma work for things that I've, experienced, you learn that children can carry trauma into adulthood, and if it's not dealt with, we know that, and what I learned when I came to Al-Anon is that, alcoholism is a family illness, right? But that's kind of the point I'm getting to, is that it impacts the family and generationally until, somebody decides to do what they need to, right, to stop the impact. It kind of just will keep flowing. And whether that's through 12-step or, therapy, I can only speak to my experience, because as I came to Al-Anon and learned there are different types of drinkers, and we as Al-Anons there's varying degrees of Al-Anonics as well. We're chronic Al-Anon. My thinking has reached a level that surpasses, someone who maybe can just kind of dabble in worrying about the alcoholic loved one. I can't take it or leave it. I can't, I can't stop once I started, and it becomes a routine. this was before. This is how I lived. And I'll get to kind of the modern day because it was never really my immediate family or even grandparents that, that I had to worry about, nor my parents. They didn't kind of continue the cycle. It was more the, perhaps some Al-Anon aspects, but just, kind of emotionally, they had been received the damage, from the alcoholic parent that they each had. And so, again, I didn't really know much about it. I do recall receiving an amends from one of my parents at one point, which I didn't really know it was part of the program, but it probably was some sort of Al-Anon program, if not Al-Anon specifically, and I just appreciate that much more after going through program myself. Like I realize now, like, again, as I spoke to before, like we have to do the work to kind of stop what's been started if we don't want it to continue, because it's a family illness. So I'll keep track on my part now. That's kind of enough about like my family and kind of where I came from. Once I grew up, because of that sort of, I remember receiving those amends and like my parent trying to like make things right. I think I was in high school, but the years and kind of years of damage hadn't really, it makes an impact. And I just remember being so ready to leave town. I think at one point I considered graduating early. I just, kind of that roller coaster of emotions was just awful. And as I grew older, I knew I was going to leave town, most likely. I could not wait. I looked forward to college. I wanted to have the college experience. I wanted mostly, a lot of it was, to better my education and my future and all those things, that's supposed to come with college. But I really wanted to just kind of flee and get out of town and kind of better my situation. And it's funny because that's sort of an Al-Anonic trait, if you will. Like I come to find out later that, trying to better the situation. However, a lot of times we think moving or changing jobs or whatever, right? It's going to just make everything go away, all of our problems. We think these types of things can bring us fulfillment or fix our alcoholic loved one or what have you. So it's funny that there was kind of a little bit of hints of that. Part of it could have just been, maybe it was likely just kind of an unhealthy coping mechanism that I was ready to dive into and just take off with, right? And it's also an Al-Anonic trait. So I remember that being a goal. And I also was trying to be smart about it. So I did not leave the state, but I did travel 4 hours south from where I lived to attend university there because I didn't want to pay out-of-state tuition somewhere else. I was really trying to be mindful but also give myself that distance. So I kind of got the farthest away I could while still trying to make some financially good decisions. And that is where I met my now husband. We are still married. And he's a big part of my story. So yeah, I sort of more classic Al-Anon stuff, right? I just kind of dove in and found what I thought was going to be a solution to the lack of the emotional void I was feeling, if you will. I rushed things and, I remember one of my aunts telling me, don't fall for the first guy you meet, and I kind of laughed her off, and I really didn't think that would happen, but he really was pretty much one of the first people I met, and I rushed into things. I didn't really know. I just was looking to fill kind of that void, if you will. And yeah, I just wasn't very, I don't want to say not smart about it because a lot has come from our relationship, but yeah, he was 2 years ahead of me in school. So I actually, if I'm remembering correctly, I think we met sophomore year. That might be right. And either way, he ended up graduating and moving back to the state where he came from. And we did long distance for a while. When we met, we were in college, so it was really hard to think about, a lot of times. This is maybe cliche, but college students party, right? They party, they have a good time. There's drinking, there's drug use, occasionally whatever. It's just kind of the theme that is kind of comes with it a lot of the time. I know that's not everybody's experience, but it was mine, and I know that can be typical. So it was really hard for me to kind of differentiate truth from false even. Is this a pattern of behavior that I should worry about? Well, no, this is a young man who is just enjoying his college years, and he's a senior, last hurrah before you're going to kind of grow up and grow into your life as a young adult. And then I just remember that always stuck in my brain that, girls mature faster than women, mature faster than men, and just, I found myself making excuses maybe for certain behaviors related to, over partying, over drinking, just often. And I, was also a college student. I enjoyed going out and having drinks and things as well. But I did know that I also, I could control. I could stop, right? And to me, I just kind of did not want to let go of that, the idea that this was healthy and that this was maybe not my person. I kind of ignored a lot of red flags, if you will. So I followed him. I stayed enrolled in school. That was really important for me to finish my degree. But kind of once again, there I went, changing scenery, right? I just thought if I could we dated long distance, and that was really hard, and I just wasn't really willing to give up despite, red flags and what have you. I just thought I need to move there. I need to be closer to him. Maybe he'll start settling down. I want to say he had not yet found employment. Yeah, he had not yet found employment, kind of was still looking for a job, but he, said he would, and he convinced me to kind of just move out. I wanted to. It wasn't like he had to talk me into it. I really did not want to let go of this, what I thought was, perfect love. And, of course, when you are young and in love, you don't always think things through. And I don't really recall my parents kind of trying to talk me out of anything. I think they realized once I was an adult, I was going to make the decisions that I was going to, and there wasn't much stopping me. They were co-signers on my college loan, so I kind of felt a bit of obligation I better finish school, and, I don't want them to stop supporting me financially, even though I was an adult, and, they really didn't need to. So I remember kind of having those ideas, and it was important to me as well. I wanted to finish school. That was important. But I was able to enroll in kind of one of the, probably not first ever, but online school is kind of all the rage now these days, right? And has been for some time. But when I did it, it was not really a thing. But I did that. I enrolled in kind of an online program that would allow me to finish my degree, and I moved to the state where my boyfriend was at the time, and we lived in his parents' spare bedroom for a while. So he finally landed a job, and we were able to afford an apartment together. And then, I finished school and got a job, and we both kind of had our jobs and what have you. So again, we got married a year after I finished college, and I actually was pregnant with our first daughter that year as well. And so, I just kind of thought, this is life, and this is this is it. I've done everything that I set out to achieve. I went to school. I found someone to love, and all the while, kind of the partying and the antics, they kept up a bit. Maybe not as much on his part, but and definitely not on mine. I mean, I was pregnant and planning a wedding and seeking employment. It was a lot of change in a year for us. But I will say after the birth of my daughter is sort of when I fell into some unhealthy coping mechanisms due to all the stress, and he sort of stuck to his. And together, we kind of just had our own stuff that we brought in, to the marriage that just was unhealthy. I sort of suffered in silence, if you will. I mean, I had moved states, as I shared before, so I didn't really have support. His family lived in the same state that we did, and it's hard. As a young married couple with children, we added a daughter, 2 years after, another daughter 2 years after the first, and it was just a lot of change. And I also decided to stop working. So I kind of worked for a very brief time, never really expanded professionally, decided, I'm going to just stay home with the kids and we'll see where this goes, decided to support him. But as I mentioned, he kind of kept up with his ways of coping with stress and what have you. And that picture that I thought was developing, it sort of just, the paintbrush got put down. I don't know, or it just turned into this scene that was unrecognizable to me, not what I had imagined our life would really be, per se. And I just remember thinking, okay, as each year passes and as we bring in more children, he's going to grow and mature and he's going to stop all this, right? This all has to stop eventually. He's going to get it. I just kept thinking he would grow up and out of a lot of habits. And it just didn't happen. I mean, there were periods of time where things would stop, and all the while I was managing and controlling. I would be in his ear, and if he would just come to bed earlier, and just all these things that we think that we can do to manage and control our alcoholic loved ones, right? I mean, I for a while thought it was me. If I just lose all this baby weight, and I take really good care of the kids, and I have dinner set at the table, every night when he gets home, and if I stop nagging him, I'll just let him decompress, and, oh, it's just tonight, maybe tomorrow night, just all the things that we think we're doing right, or that we're saying right. It just, you come to learn that it doesn't quite work that way, and nothing you can say can change a person. So, I just kept doing all of that, and meanwhile, I had fallen into, and the words are not coming to me. It was a eating disorder. That was kind of the issue that I had, and ways of coping with this kind of lack in my marriage, and just the stress of being a new mom and a young mom, and we had bills, and we were driving this car we couldn't afford, and I mean, we could pay our mortgage, but he would want to fill the house with nice things, and it was credit card debt, and just a huge mess. And finally this promotion came around for him, and it meant that we would have to move to California. And, California sounds like a dream, right? And I thought I just need to support him. He's going to make more money, and this is all going to get better. Oh, and if we move, he's not going to know anyone there, so who's he going to party with? And yes, let's do it. I just didn't consider a lot of things. Just kept thinking that if I supported him or, whatever. So we moved. We were in California for some time, and things didn't change. There were either new habits or, that's when the drinking kind of became a thing again. And, I just kept saying, well, honestly, it started to bother me a lot then, because we were really alone at that point. No family. His family was not there. My family was not there. It was a lot of stress on me, and we still just had our 2 daughters. But maybe probably a lot of it was fear deep down inside. I mean, it was hard to recognize at the time, but maybe it was fear of him losing his job, or really it was just hard. I was lonely out there. I had made friends, but, I really wanted my partner, and he just wanted to kind of escape on the weekends. And, we would go do things as a family, but he would drink, and I would have to be the designated driver every time. And I just kept thinking, like, why can't I have fun with him when he wants to do this? Like, why can't it be a fun experience? Why can't he have 1 or 2? And then, maybe that day I want to have a few extra glasses of wine and relax. Like, why can't he drive us home? It was never the case. And I would plead and beg and talk. And, I never really I never understood it. I just didn't understand it. After being out there for a few years, the company he worked for closed, and we weighed our options. Should we try to stay here? Should we move to a different state? There was an option to move back home to my home state, and we thought eventually we would like to get back to his home state, but this would kind of be a stepping stone for me to be a little bit closer to family. I actually had become pregnant with our 3rd child, so we thought, let's go there and spend a little bit of time. We'll have the baby there. It'd be nice to have family close, all the things. So we did that. And I, again, still kind of in the throes of my eating disorder, just more stress, right? With all of this happening, all this life change. We had to move across 2 states, and we had young children. I was pregnant. And I was sort of managing and controlling that okay on my own, but things got worse after I had my son, because I then became unexpectedly pregnant with our 4th child. And you would think we would know how to avoid that if needed, right? By this time. But, I'd always wanted a big family as well. Like, I loved children. I was excited. Really, it just caught me off guard because we were in a very unstable place. And so because of that, he again was just kind of back into his coping mechanisms and unhealthy coping mechanisms, and I was in mine. And during pregnancies, I was able to sort of manage it to a certain degree. Like, my babies were healthy, they weren't born underweight or anything like that. But I knew mentally I was not well. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I want to be mindful of time. This is how I came to Al-Anon. But all the while, the same stuff is going on where I'm just, asking him to stop. During my pregnancy with baby 4, he did get a job in his home state. And so we relocated only after being back in my home state for like a year and a half. So kind of, again, all of that like same pattern of, if we can just get here, that was his way of thinking. If I could just get here, and, I didn't know anything about the illness at the time. And so I just thought, we just have to do this. We just have to run around and find that better, advancement in job placement. And I actually had picked up a job while we were in California because it's California. The pricing, living, it was outrageous. And we were up to our eyeballs in credit card debt. So I got that job with the intention of paying down credit cards, and meanwhile I'm, just trying to like meet basic needs. All that to say, I'm segueing. So I had this job while I was pregnant with my 4th, and when we moved back to his home state, it really I reached my rock bottom after I had my son, my baby 4. I knew that I was at this place where I was ready to. I remember saying divorce so many times I mean, at least one time, several times in many conversations that I had with him. And I knew that it was unfair to bring up that idea because I had a lot of work to do on myself. I knew that I was hurting. I knew there was something wrong, with my food situation, and I didn't know what to do because I had tried therapy, I had tried dieting, all these things. So that's when I found a 12-step program to help me with that. And that's not what I'm here to talk about today, but I will just say that I found recovery by a miracle, through a 12-step program. And I recovered from my eating disorder. And that was, had I not gone through that process, I may have never found Al-Anon, or at least not in the timeline that I did. And it's all a God thing. So, a year after I was recovered, in my, with the food stuff, I was talking to my sponsor one day about how my husband's drinking bothered me. And she just suggested, hey, why don't you join an Al-Anon meeting, just listen in and see if it might be you can relate, to see if you can relate. So I did that. I tuned into a meeting just like this one, and I listened to a speaker. I listened to the group. I think I came back the next week. I listened to how the group studied the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had already been familiar with the big book because of my other 12-step program, and so I sort of just had this amazing shift that probably should have been there for at least that whole year. But this shift in my thinking that wow, this needs to be applied in this area of my life. I'm an Al-Anon. I could fully qualify and identify as an Al-Anon. And, it was a bit frustrating at first. I was like, why wasn't I here sooner? And I've come to understand that God works in his perfect timing, right? And had I tried to recover in that aspect first, it wouldn't have worked. Every situation is different. Every person is different. Anyone listening might not have both two issues, right? But for me, I did. And I needed to work on myself in that aspect, in that area with the food stuff. And I did. And it took me a whole year to realize, okay, time to approach and use this spiritual solution in this area of my life, because my alcoholic loved one is now a grown man. I've followed him from state to state. I've prayed. I've pleaded. I've tried to manage and control. I've done all these things to, thinking that he's going to grow up and grow out of some of these things that I don't like. And it's not happening. And it's time to turn this over to God. And, I just want to kind of step back to what I had shared before, that I grew up in a Christian home, so I knew a concept of God. I knew God for many years. And I'm going to find a page in the big book just to sort of read, because it really stuck out to me. This is in Bill's story on page 12. It says, it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. So, and then it says, nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. For me, it wasn't only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself, because I had always known and believed in that. For me, it was only a matter of being willing to turn all of this over to that higher power, to God. Because even though I knew God and had known God, and even in the previous year been closer to God than I ever had been, I still was not applying that knowledge to this area of my life. And it was really bizarre to me. Like, how could you be recovered in this whole other area of your life and turning all of these other things over to him, but not this? I almost felt like a fraud. Like, I had to check in, with my sponsor. I'm like, yeah, this is me. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I haven't been here. Have I been missing something? And I think I was probably just reminded, kind of like I said previously, like, if God works in His timing, it's okay. And it's been okay, right? I was able to work this out with that same sponsor. I just sort of reworked the steps very quickly. And what that's like, I'd like to share a little bit about how that works. I'm so grateful to have been a part of the Big Book Solution group, both with my other 12-step program and in this one, because, we study the Big Book, the first 164 pages, we study it like a textbook. And there's a very specific reason why. It's because the founders of AA wrote this textbook, this book. It's originally published in 1939, so it's an old book, but everything that is written within these pages, the first 154 pages are, not their original text. They haven't been altered, except for maybe some minor, like, grammatical errors or just, things like that. But the steps themselves have never been changed. They've never, the doctor's opinion is still the same doctor's opinion that was written by Dr. Silkworth, and back then, because he understood alcoholism, and he understood that there was a type of alcoholic who needed something more than he could offer. And that is us as Al-Anons as well, right? If we qualify as an Al-Anon, a chronic Al-Anon, this is the only solution for us. And, the same doctor's opinion still stands true. This illness, of alcoholism, which we learn about thoroughly, it doesn't change. It's the same as it was then, and it'll be the same 30 years from now. To be able to finally have an understanding of what was happening with any of my loved ones who have struggled with this illness was, I can't even put it into words. I mean, it was a relief to, a relief maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. It's almost a blessing to be able to understand to this depth of, to have this knowledge that this is what it is that's happening. So yeah, I think, wait a minute, but, the steps are worked rather quickly. We have everything we need here in the first 164 pages of this book, and, we've wasted a lot of years. I mentioned, from the time I met him to, just 5 years ago, and I met him in 2007. I maybe didn't start becoming worried about it for a couple of years after that, truly kind of starting to have those worries. But that's, we're talking 15 years. I don't know, just a lot of time is wasted, can be wasted. For some of us, it's our parents, for some of it's our children, we just, whoever it is that we're, and the thing is that when you work the steps, you decide to finally just turn this over to God. There's a lot of work to be done. That comes with steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have to do a lot of work to be able to truly say that we're done, and to kind of recognize where we fell short. Where did we do to kind of, and how dare we, right? Like, sort of get in the way of our loved ones' lives, if you will. We're not God. We're never meant to play that part. It's almost a huge lift off my shoulders. It was a huge relief to just be able to turn this over. So yeah, that's, the first 3 steps are just sort of, preparing your mind and being ready and willing to say, I'm done. And I had done that previously, and I was ready. I was ready to do that in this area of my life. And 4 through 9 were just, that hard work, a lot of pen to paper, a lot of apologies, a lot of things, and this is why we work closely with a recovered sponsor. They help us to see a side of things and a part of us that we, it's just in a different light that we were never really willing to do before. And 10, 11, and 12 is where I live daily now. I think it was in my other fellowship I had once heard the term that is our maintenance test, right? Say, maintain your spiritual life. And I think it was my grand sponsor once that said and explained it in a way better that this is the time where this is where we live now, where we're lengthening and strengthening our spiritual life, right, with our higher power, because it is a journey. Life is a journey. We don't get there and we're just done. This is forever. I will forever be an Al-Anon. It's a progressive illness. I mentioned in the beginning, I kind of had some traits here and there, and I would try to manage and control things in certain aspects, and it only got worse and worse. I progressed into this illness further and further across the years. And yeah, this is going to be me forever. I don't get to wake up tomorrow and be rid of it. This is going to be my life, and my story, for the rest of my life. So yeah, that is why every day I have to wake up and, choose to do it again. I have to work at perfecting and enlarging are the words. I know I have them written in a note somewhere. I have to work to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life, because it's never ending. This relationship I have with God is unlike anything I ever had before. This is the spiritual program of recovery, and this is where I get to be useful now. All those years where I wasted, trying to manage and control things and apply my solution to life, there's nothing but more damage, and I've been in the way of so many things that needed to happen, if you will. And now I can live that way. I can truly say I live that way. And this last year has been just one of last couple of years have been some of the most challenging that I have ever gone through. And I know for a fact that if I had not, I'll elaborate a bit, we added a couple more kids, a few more kids to our bunch over the years. And I always got what I always wanted, which was, a lot of children. I'm so blessed in that area. I always wanted to be a mother. And, there have been a lot of good times and a lot of good things, that have happened. But, he and I have been separated for the last year and a half. And, there are other things that have happened and occurred that are kind of outside issues that I won't, share here, but I no longer, I am okay, and I will be okay, regardless of what the outcome is. There's a whole chapter in this book devoted to wives and to family members that walk us through these things, right? There's a paragraph that, says, sometimes no one's going to be able to tell us what to do. Our sponsor's not going to tell us what to do. They're just another chronic Al-Anonic who has been through this before and had the spiritual experience and who is no longer, uses our mind as a solution, right, to control a loved one, and they're just here to remind us of who we are when our crazy thinking gets a little too crazy. But always, it's always going to be between God and I, and only God knows the future for my family and what's going to happen. But yeah, if I am, the old me would be in tears. I would be, can't believe this is my life. It's a mess. Like, I know, and I can confidently say that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. My kids are going to be okay. My husband will be okay. Like, God has a plan for everyone. And it's with that type of thinking that I get to now be useful. I get to be, instead of worrying about what he's doing and what he's got going on in his life in this area, right? I sponsor, that's part of 12-step work. I get to get on meetings and share part of my 12-step work. I can actually be useful and lend and share my experience of strength and hope that this solution brings, that this spiritual solution brings. You really cannot find it anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, I tried it all. I don't think I spoke to that. I think it's important to say that in my experience, I did so many things. I mean, I did therapy. I read so many books, so many self-help books. I tried to get him to read books. I read books myself, about how to be a better wife and just all the things. Just, we try all the things, right? I don't know. I didn't do anything, too crazy, if you will, but I tried many, many things. One of the biggest things was therapy. Lots of different therapists, had a lot of time, wasted time, and money, just trying to fix something that I had all along. I just chose not to turn over to God. I always had God. God never left me. He was always with me. I just chose not to trust him. And in that, I was so very, very useless. I can't even count the number of hours that I wasted where I could have been helpful. And, that's where amends come in. I had to make right all the things I'd done wrong. I had to mend relationships with my children, with my other family members, with my parents even with my husband, and to be told, like, if I had ever been told that I was going to have to do that and that I was not being helpful, that's like the last thing anyone as an Al-Anon likes to hear, right? We think we're the most helpful. We just love them so much. We just care. But now I truly get to be hopeful. And like I said before, I sponsor. I get to share my story when I'm blessed to do so. I can help with the fellowship. I'm just always here. It's such a blessing to be able to share and be truthful and honest. I don't shy away at sharing my story when it's appropriate. Even in, maybe not to a random stranger, but there's been times where a topic will come up in a conversation, and I maybe not in front of, the entire group, but I'll let somebody know later, hey, I've been in your shoes before. I'm happy to tell you how I'm at peace. And again, it's not for everyone, but this solution, it works. For those who need it, it works. And the only way you can actually try or know is to try. If you've tried everything else, like many of us have, there's no harm in trying, but you definitely have to be ready. If I had tried to apply this, I always wonder, I can't help but wonder. I don't always wonder anymore. I'm at peace with my life, but you can't help but wonder as a human being, right? Like, oh, well, what if this had happened? I don't lose sleep over it or fret, but, at some point in my journey, I wondered, had I found this solution sooner, what would be different? And none of that really matters because it is what it is at this point, but, yeah, it's, everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay and everything is okay. I still have about 5 minutes. I'm going to think back real quick and see if I skipped anything, because I did talk about kind of where I came from, how I found program, what I did, and I think I maybe glossed over a little bit on how I found a sponsor, because my situation was a little bit unique given I had already worked a 12-step program. But I mean, anyone who's had this spiritual experience, within this group can be helpful to you, whether by answering questions or, sharing their story. I think it's important to note that you don't have to find, the perfect sponsor. If you're new today, you're wondering, well, I just need someone who, I don't have children. Darlene couldn't help me. She has kids. Like, it's not like that. This work that any of us that are blessed to do, to, sponsor or even just be a lending ear or share a story, it is such a blessing. It is part of our journey. It is what keeps us, it helps us to enlarge and perfect and enlarge our spiritual life, right? Like, it gets us closer to God. It helps us to remember our blessings. It keeps us, in our work. And I guess I could explain a little bit more about 10 and 11, right? So I have just a few more minutes, so I'll elaborate on that because this is what life is like now. I'll just sum it up by saying life right now is peaceful despite all this chaos, despite having, had a family and, brought children into this world and, been through some other messy things, hard things, really hard things. I'm at peace. I'm at this perfect peace that truly only God can provide that I never knew before. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. And just to kind of elaborate on what I do on a daily basis, 12-step work, as I've mentioned, and then, step 10 is, we have to continue taking a daily inventory for, things that happen in our day-to-day life. So if something comes up, and I find myself wanting to manage and control, him or something else, I have to pause and connect with God and ask him to remove that character defect, essentially, right? It's usually tied to fear or selfishness in some way. And I get in touch with my sponsor and, send a 10-step and then I go and help someone and be helpful again in my 12-step work, because I'm reminded daily when I do step 11 even, which is morning prayer and meditation, and in the evening of, meditation period at the end of the day, I'm reminded that I knew what life was like before this. I can remember it. It's only been 5 years, but it's been 5 years. I can remember what life was like, and it was awful. I don't ever want to go back to that. And so I have to do what I have to do. 10, 11, and 12 daily, like I said, until I die. And it truly is just a blessing. I can't reiterate that enough. I know I've said that a lot. I'll just end with this. You might feel hopeless. You have to. You have to have tried everything. You have to feel, you have to be at your rock bottom. Our alcoholic loved ones, if they are blessed enough, even, it's so weird to say that, they will hit that bottom one day, because you can only go up from being at bottom, and we have to too. We have to be truly done. And there's a solution, and it's an amazing journey, and I hope that any of you that are new will stick around and join us. That's in the big book, you know, we'll see you on this road of happy destiny. And yeah, it's an amazing experience. So I think in that time, I just wanted to thank everyone again for listening and for the opportunity to share my story. I hope it's been helpful to someone. I am going to close with that, and I'm just going to mention that seventh tradition of our group. Every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently has no overhead expenses. But if you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please send contributions directly to Al-Anon World Service Office by visiting al-anon.org, al-anon.org. For questions about this meeting, or if you are looking for a sponsor, please send emails to alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. I'll repeat that again. It's alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. Recordings of the meetings can be accessed on YouTube by searching at Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box. Once again, it's at Al-Anon Step Speaker. If you are interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit www.alanonbigbooksolutiongroup.org. Now, let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer, or a prayer of your own choosing said in silence. Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Just one moment.